Comic strips have existed ever since newspapers decided to put them in there. But when the internet came along, traditional comics became webcomics and turned into something bad. Relatable webcomics. Saying that, I understand there's an audience for those comics, and I don't want to take that away from them. However, I personally don't like those comics, only so for the fact that most of the time they're just pointing at something, referencing that exists, and not transforming the idea. And that's why I love stand-up comedians, as they know how to articulate a mundane story and somehow make it interesting with their wording. Moving on, Sarah Andersen's work is different in that matter. So join me in my interview with Sarah Andersen herself, and so we can get a better understanding of her inner thoughts about the comics that she creates. But for now, let's understand why Skillshare is so neat. This video is sponsored by Skillshare. Skillshare is a fantastic online learning community with over 25,000 classes in business, design, and more. And relating to the topic of this video, Sarah Andersen herself actually made a few courses on Skillshare. Creating webcomics from sketches to final comic, coloring webcomics from line art to digital color, bringing your webcomic to life, create an animated comic. And the first 500 people, especially those interested in learning more about how to make your own webcomic, to use this link gets 2 clip-clappin' months of Skillshare Premium, and with an annual subscription of less than $10 a month, it's the most affordable service in its class. And speaking of class, let's dive on in to those questions. Oh, do you notice that it's raining outside?
What inspired you to make comics about your life and general millennial problems?
Relatable humor about things like awkwardness and anxiety is quite common now. But in 2011, when I started, there weren't many people talking about mental health issues. I was feeling isolated because I felt pressure to present a polished version of myself and felt unable to speak about my problems. Sarah Scribbles is an antidote to that for me, and writing what I consider to be bluntly honest human experiences gave me a purpose I felt proud of. My main goal with the comic is to help others not feel alone and to embrace their own oddness.
Now I know she can't hear me, but that's wonderful stuff. That is, sharing a webcomic for the purpose of helping others and sharing your own experiences to, well, help others. In marketing terms, that's isolating a niche market and giving the consumer what they want. Acceptance.
In your opinion, do you think there's any correlation between comedy and sadness?
Yes, but it's not necessary. I try to give some pushback to the idea that sadness and creativity are inextricably linked because, in reality, things like depression can be massive hindrances to the creative process. I tend to think good comedy is more about revealing truth than sadness, but of course, sometimes sadness is the truth you are trying to talk about.
Back at it again with my unnecessary input, but her response is exactly why I like her stories compared to other relatable comics. As interpreting what Sarah said, she pushes the line of traditional webcomics in terms of being only centered around sadness.
But despite being relatable, she
wants people to get better and working towards improving themselves. The reader for other comics often just relates to it and, well, moves on with their life.
What are your thoughts on merchandising and animation for comics? For example, let's compare Bill Watterson and Jim Davis with what they did with their works.
The classic two extremes. I admire Watterson's approach the most. I constantly think about how he presented his work to the world and try to maintain at least a shred of the dignity he had. However, it's important to remember that Watterson worked in an era where he was able to live from only syndication, at least to my knowledge. Webcomic artists have to diversify their income to stay afloat, and merch is just a part of that. I definitely think there's a way of maintaining artistic integrity in the way you handle those things. For me personally, I have a heavy hand in merch designs and try not to over-promote. For now, I really just see it as a means to continue my webcomic.
Now that's a lovely mindset. Also noting merch, I'm actually pretty glad that she has a big hand in producing all of it. I mean, it's a lot better than just telling your publisher to put your face on any merchandise they can just because you're making money from it. That would be bad for your audience. And your morals. And speaking of morals, if you happen to want to buy one of Sarah Andersen's cool pet plushy rabbit, part of the product actually goes to charity. And I like that.
Do you have any comics or webcomics that you like to read?
So many! I tend to read comics that are in my own genre, so typically slice of life. I recently discovered June Abernathy, and she's hysterical. Some others include poorly drawn lines, webcomic name Allison Zai, and Will McPhail. I also read a lot of manga and recently really enjoyed my lesbian experience with loneliness.
After looking these things up, I'll take a look into them. And you might also be interested, so I'll leave some links below.
Along with the production of Sarah Scribbles, are you working on any other comic or media-related projects that you'd like to share?
Yes, Cheshire Crossing is a story by Andy Weir that I recently finished illustrating, and it will be out in July. I also wrote a story about a vampire in love with a werewolf called Fangs, and it should start releasing online on Halloween if all goes accordingly.
Now that's a great inside scoop if I ever heard one, and I'll be sure to check out Fangs when it comes out. Also, this is great advice to people who already made it, as it's beneficial to not only work with other people such as, well, features, but also things such as investing in the community, such as helping fund a project, or just working on other projects in general that is unrelated or vaguely related to your main content that you produce.
Lastly, is there any advice you would give to aspiring artists?
Above all, have grit. Don't let perceived failures or comparisons stop you. Grit is more important than natural talent, and it will take you places. It never fails to amaze me how much artists improve if they just keep making work through the years. So set yourself a schedule and keep going. And please, take care of your body and mind through all of this. In my opinion, the best work comes from happy, healthy, motivated artists.
And I have nothing to add to that. So you better have paid attention to when she was speaking. And you should continue paying attention while I thank the people for voicing lines. You can check out their stuff in the description below, and I hope you enjoyed their respective works. Also noting the title of the video, she isn't literally selling sadness, which is an impossible theoretical thing. I meant it more as she likes to retell stories about her life and struggles, and how they sometimes have the themes of sadness in her works. Can you even imagine someone commenting on the title of the video and not making it to this part? I can't. But I can imagine me thanking Sarah for taking time out of her busy schedule to have a nice chat. And if you haven't already, you should go check out her comics and merch store if you're interested in seeing more of her works. And if you're hankering for more me, here's a few places that I appear at. It sounds like the rain is still going on, so I'm gonna have to cut this video short in case anything bad happens. And have a good